I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Dominic West. Dominic, one of the themes explored in season 5 of The Crown is how Charles, being the monarch endlessly in waiting for his ascendancy, has really weighed on him and came to define him. I just wonder, did that figurative weight on his shoulders inform how you wanted to portray him?
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's a major theme of Charles's journey in season 5. I think Peter was very interested in, I suppose, exploring the idea of a man who is in his prime, who, as he says in the show, all his contemporaries are realizing their sort of dreams and their destinies in whatever walks of life they're in, and he is still in the sort of waiting room and waiting for his being in the extraordinary situation of having to wait for his mother to die before he can fulfill his destiny. And I think Peter thought that was an extraordinary and almost unique situation for a man in his prime to be in, and so that's what we explore mainly in season 5.
I think it's a really interesting thing that a lot of people probably don't fully appreciate about him. You must imagine going through your life with that weight, with that thing just hanging over you, and you're waiting for you to fulfill your potential. It's I just think it would actually really it would emotionally affect you in ways that a lot of us can't imagine. And I suppose you're trying to get into his mindset. What does that do you think, to a person like him, that affects the way, you know, your cadence, your voice, your body language? Was that stuff that was all part of the, you know, the puzzle of putting him together?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Charles at that time in the 90s, he's incredibly he's sad. He's really sad. I mean, and that's mainly because his marriage has failed, and because he can't be with the woman he loves. And but there's a sort of stoop to him. There's a weight to him. And I did find in a lot of the interviews that I saw, he'd sort of glance up. He'd all be sort of glancing up quite a lot. And it's sort of a way of, I think, a way of getting out of the situation he was in, to sort of, oh God, you know, but almost pleading to God. But also in my mind, I thought he was glancing up at this bloody crown hanging over his head, you know, looking at this bloody thing that's sort of hanging over him like a sword of Damocles. And
Yeah.
and I think that's a lot of the reason why that was such a tricky time for him. You know, apart from anything else, it was, you know, I said waiting for his mother to die. But the other thing is, which none of us has had to deal with, thank God, he had to obey his mother well into his, you know, he's in his 50s now, or late or 40s, and he still has to do exactly what his mother says, because unfortunately for him, his mother is not just his mum, but she's also his sovereign and his boss, his sort of, you know, head of the firm. And there's not many of us have to deal with that. And I think that must be a huge psychological burden.
No, of course. We all have interesting relationships with our mothers. My mum will tell me to eat my meatballs, and that's pretty much as far as it will go in terms of
as far as it
you know
gets,
what I mean?
yeah.
So
and
yeah,
that it's okay, back off. But he couldn't do that.
no. So that means
so much of a rite of passage, I suppose, of growing up is you know,
right.
leaving your parents behind, is charting your own path, and he's not able to do that.
So his stunted ambitions really informs him, and that I learned something from this show about him, which is remarkable given that this is not a documentary. The show does a really admirable, pardon me, job of humanizing the family. However, you know, the then Prince Charles, he was so maligned and misunderstood by an unforgiving media and the public. So what preconceptions did you have about him, if any, and did they change after playing him?
Well, I suppose, like almost like everybody else, I viewed him through the lens of his original sin, which was he married. He didn't marry the woman he loved. You know, he married a woman who he didn't love, and I think in that way, I see Charles as a sort of tragic hero with a tragic flaw, and this flaw is this marriage that he entered into knowing that he loved somebody else. And I still think he's a hero because he was it was forced upon him. He had this obligation, which heirs to the throne no longer have, thank God. They have to marry a virgin, and finding a virgin, as my colleague Olivia Williams, who plays Camilla, said in an interview the other day, finding a virgin in London in the 1980s over the age of 20 was quite difficult.
Yeah, it's like hen's teeth.
So that was my understanding, and I think most people's understanding of Charles is that whatever misfortune he was going through, he sort of brought upon himself because he agreed to marry someone knowing that he loved someone else, and that's the sort of fatal flaw he has. And that's what was interesting playing through that was realizing how tragic that was, because I do think he was obliged to do that against his will, and felt deeply guilty about the suffering he caused Diana and everybody else as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. The switch between Josh O'Connor and you was something that I was really looking forward to witnessing, because Josh did a great job playing him as a younger man, won an Emmy for his trouble. You come along and I feel like we really start to lean into the side of Charles where he is really trying to get that agency. You give him this strength and this you can see the ambition in his eyes. He's progressive, he's practical, he wants to be relevant, he's engaged, he's energized. I feel like you really gave him that, you imbued that sense in him, and I really enjoyed that. Was that something that surprised you about him, how he wanted to be more than a figurehead and be engaged and not distant?
Well, I mean, the flip side of all what we've been talking about, that he was waiting to fulfill his destiny, was that he was free, which he would not have been if he'd been king. He was free to pursue a more political and certainly more activist line of work. And for me, the great redeeming feature about Charles and his life and his career is the Prince's Trust, which I think is one of the great charitable organizations of the world. And he's now helped 1 million young people transform their lives. And I think that was the best possible thing he could have done then, and he did it. And that's why episode 5 of season 5 is talks a lot about that. And I was very keen that that Peter got that in. I think Peter was very keen on it as well. But I just thought that's his great achievement, and that as he says at the start of episode 5, I can't bear dissipation. I can't bear it's not in his nature to do what a lot of princes of Wales do, a lot of spoiled rich kids, or a lot of heirs who are not able to fulfill their destiny. What you or I would do, what I would do, is you go out and get drunk and have a good time.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. He says that's not in his nature. It's in his nature to strive, to try and serve, and to make people's lives better. And I think in that way he's a hero. And I was very keen to balance that that sort of fatal heroic flaw that I was talking about with his achievements, and the fact that he, him not being monarch enabled him to achieve quite a lot that he would not have otherwise been able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a royal, being a sovereign, I think I would probably veer towards the most, unproductive parts of my personality. He is not that way at all. And I, again, learned a lot about him. I knew that about him already, but this show, I just love how Peter, Morgan, and yourself and the team have an obvious affection for not only the family and there's sensitivities around portraying them, particularly given many of them are still around, but also that we just to try to give us a bit of an insight into that. And episode 5 is so good for you. I mean, you just get to do so much. You dance in the end of it. I mean, that's fun. Was that slightly nerve-wracking, or are you a pretty good dancer?
Well, that wasn't in the script, and then I think it was Olivia Williams who found it, or someone found it. It wasn't me anyway. They showed me on YouTube he's Prince Charles breakdancing with kids during a Prince's Trust event, And we thought, I just thought, this is gold. I mean, this
Have
is
to.
fantastic, because it not only is it funny and he's sort of goofy and looks fairly ridiculous, but there's real. I discovered he's very serious about his dancing, in his Scottish dancing. There's video of him at the Gillies Ball in Balmoral, and he does all this sort of thing, and he takes it deadly seriously, and he obviously quite fancies himself, I think, on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And then you see it again in this breakdance thing. It's not just him being a good sport and joining in and feeling awkward but doing it anyway. He's quite competitive in a way.
Yeah, he gets into it.
He's quite sort of, I mean, he does this appalling dance, which I learned every move. You don't really see it in the final cut, but I did learn all these preposterous moves he was doing like this.
Yes.
And he, I think it says a lot about him. And it was those sort of ticks, those sort of off-guard moments that are gold for an actor, because with Charles, you don't see him in private ever. You do with Diana, because she did tape loads of tapes of her talking frankly about her life. But with Charles, it's very hard to find him not on duty. And that was, so it's moments like that, and moments that came to light since the Queen died, all the, Pengate and all the
I love it. Isn't that great?
Oh, it was fantastic. Go bloody pen.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. Yes, Charles. I want you to swear and throw something across the room. Yeah. That just means you're a human being.
Yeah, it was quite refreshing after the Queen. I think it was quite refreshing. Within, she did 70 years of never showing a thing, and within a day he was he was having a bit of a fit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I that's why I like him. I think he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's emotional, and
what a joy to play someone like that. And then I think, speaking of joys, Dominic, you and I have sons that are very similar in age, so I mean this when I say I can't imagine how special it was to have your son sitting on set portraying William. What a joy. Wow.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was it wasn't sort of planned or anything, but I remember the casting director saying, we're having real trouble finding a blue-eyed blonde 13-year-old boy who's about to go to boarding school. And I went, well, hang on, I think I know one. And also I've got a younger son who's sort of a similar age gap between William and Harry. And I thought, I said to him, do you want to audition? And he went, yeah. I mean, his main interest is in soccer, so I said he might miss out on the football, and he said anyway, he that's why he's not doing it for this last season, but he went for it, and it was cool because, I mean, it was amazing watching. He's never acted before, and not in the school play because of COVID, and it was very moving watching him. I thought there was such innocence to him and such raw, simplicity to him, which you're always trying to find in acting, but also because he was really good, but also because there's a familiarity and a physical intimacy and familiarity that's very hard to get with a child actor, and that it was very handy to have with Senan because we're real life father and son.
That's right.
It was great. It was hilarious. I mean, his first scene, he was in Windsor Castle having tea with the Queen, and I said to him, look, just listen to whatever Imelda Staunton says. She's one of the great actresses in the world. Just do whatever she says, and appreciate this moment. And he went, and then he started stuffing him, and he couldn't believe, never mind Imelda, it was the tea, the cakes.
Oh yeah.
And he was getting these eclairs, and I ran and I went, look, calm down, you're going to be eating these all afternoon, take it easy. And by the end of the afternoon, he was stuffed full of cream eclairs and stuff. But it was great. It was great having him there.
I think all 13-year-old sons are the same, because mine would just go straight to craft services, and you would not be able to leave from that table. Absolutely. I didn't even know it was your son until 3 months ago when I was, researching the show, and I was like, oh my goodness, and he's fabulous. So congrats on that. So you spoke about episode 5. That's absolutely one of the highlights for you. But episode 9, Couple 31, is also really great. We don't actually get a lot of scenes with Charles and Diana together, obviously, because they're separating. the one at the house, when you come back, or when Charles comes back, crackles with like drama and also, I hate the word, but this chemistry between them. Everything's laid out on the table, and there's this moment where you as Charles ask Diana to say Camilla, and she does. Your face does a like calisthenics to the point where this is real vulnerability that you're able to portray for us. It's so compelling. Can you take us back to that scene? I think it's probably the scene for me of the whole series.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, me too. I loved it. It was an amazing opportunity. It was essentially a one-act play written by Peter Morgan that we got to do in the middle of a TV show, and I have admired Elizabeth Debicki ever since I saw her in Widows, and it was frustrating that we didn't get to act together much because Charles and Di are separated by the time we start. But so it was this incredible opportunity to do this play, essentially two-hander play that we had 3 days to shoot. We had plenty of time. We rehearsed it, and it was a joy. That moment you're talking about when he says, you know, will you say her name? It's a tricky one, because I can hear, and I felt this when I first read it. I thought, that is so insensitive in a way, or is he really going to torture her like that? And I can hear all the not necessarily all the female viewers, but certainly my wife and everyone going, bastard.
Oh yeah, my wife was like, what? But we went with it. Yeah.
But I don't know, it was so I had to sort of suspend any judgment on that one, just that particular line, because I didn't really like it. And but it sort of works because you see in that, I don't know what you see. I don't know. You see what you see, but it's another moment, I think, with Charles where he does something that's slightly annoying, or slightly insensitive, or very selfish in a way. But you sort of see why, and you sort of, I think, give him the benefit of the doubt. And that for me was the whole journey of the thing. It was, I really like the. I mean, you have to really, to play a character, you have to learn how to love them, and you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, really. And I initially was very resistant to any scenes which showed Charles in a bad light, and then I realized, I've got to trust the dramatist here. He's a very good writer, and we have to see the whole person. And I think in that moment when he says, will you say her name? That's one of those moments. It's a tricky, bittersweet moment of extreme selfishness and extreme vulnerability.
Absolutely. You go from weathered and melancholy to just suddenly your face changes. It's beautiful. So you're in production on season 6, the final season. Obviously, many of us are looking forward to, I suppose you could use that word, how the show is going to treat Diana's tragic death, the lead up and then the aftermath. Many of the cast have already said it's going to be done in a very sensitive way. Given now that the Queen has passed away, there's extra sensitivity around the family. How have you found season 6 so far, especially given that we're getting closer to the present day, and so things are getting even more sensitive?
Yeah. I mean, we are still sort of 25 years away, and I think there's been a lot of writing about how this is too close to the present day, but it's still a generation. It's still 20 years, and I think also it's sort of the first time where the benefit of retrospective, where with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of 20 years, we can sort of look at it now with a level of I don't know, objectivity or fairness. And I think particularly the divorce, actually, particularly season 5, all the stuff like that scene that Elizabeth and I do, where we have this made up but don't think it happened, but it's a very satisfying scene that the two get back together, and or just have a quick moment of review and of reconciliation or of review. I think that's what The Crown, it does so well. It imagines, it sort of creatively conjectures what might have gone on behind closed doors. That's why we like watching it. And it also gives a sense of closure, which it did in that scene. And I think with Diana's death, I think there will be a sense of well, put it this way. My American agent said, so what happens in season 6? The Duke of Edinburgh kills Diana, right? And and I spoke to a 13-year-old girl who's my daughter's half sister, and she said, I said, do you know who Diana was? And she goes, yeah, she's the one that the Queen killed, isn't she? So there's still quite a lot of misunderstanding about Diana's death, and so I'm, you know, the Crown gets a lot of flack for playing fast and loose with the facts and putting out half truths as truths. But actually, to be honest, I think there's an awful lot of confusion about Diana's death that the Crown hopefully will clear up, particularly in relation to Al Fayed and his machinations, and also the fact that there were 3 police investigations into all the conspiracy theories, and all of which came to nothing. So I think it's sort of high time we had a proper post-mortem in a way, and sort of saw what happened for what it was, which was a tragedy of unfortunately of her own making, and all the stuff that we see in season 5 with Panorama and all that. Again, to me, that was all news to me. Yeah, as all news to everyone until only a few months ago that she was put up to that she was, you know, very much deceived in by the makers of Panorama. And I think so I think it's a hugely dramatic event, Diana's death in season 6, obviously, but also one that I think is in good hands. I think the Crown, I think Peter writes sensitively and sympathetically, and people get a fair hearing, and I think not everyone quite understands what went on, so it's a good thing.
I can't wait to see it. Thank you, Dominic, for talking about it, and congrats on a great season 5.
Thanks, Robert. Great to speak to you.